Shabbat shalom. When you see someone dancing alone, it's a little odd. You're thinking, good for you. You're really putting yourself out there. Good job. You're dancing to the beat of your own drum. Fantastic. It's not until there's another person who goes to dance alongside them that a movement gets started. We focus a lot of our attention in Genesis on charismatic leaders, on Abraham starting the Jewish people, Jacob having so many sons that he really continues it. But Isaac doesn't have so much time spent on him in the Torah. But Isaac is the one to go up next to the one who's dancing alone and say, I'm here with you. I see you. You're a leader. I'm going to help you start the movement. So Isaac, who gets the least amount of attention, I want to focus in on him for a few minutes together today to think about what is the significance of his story. And when we think about Isaac, who is of course important, he's part of our Amidah. We say we pray to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's one of our forefathers. But we just have to dig a little bit deeper to find out what are the lessons that we gain from this forefather Isaac. And I want to think about together 3 lessons that we learn from Isaac, who redigs the wells of his father Abraham. 3 lessons. The first, Isaac not only digs, or rather redigs, 1 well or 2, but he redigs 3 wells that had previously been dug by his father Abraham. And in the Jewish tradition, it's been accepted that when we see something happen 3 times, we call this a chazaka. A chazakah. It is strong. It is strengthened. And I would say we call this a habit. That when someone repeats something 3 times, it's not just twice a coincidence. But when we do something 3 times, it is strengthened. It becomes habitual. It's part of our rhythm. And by redigging 3 wells, Isaac has created a chazaka, a habit of redigging wells, the wells of his father Abraham, and what we might call the wells of Jewish tradition. So the first lesson we learn is that if you want to create a habit, do it 3 times, a chazaka. Number 2, habits are not always easy. Isaac redug 3 wells, and after each well, he gave them a name. First, Isaac redug and named the first well Esek, meaning contend. Because Isaac contended or disputed with the people around him, the Philistines, who said, this is our well. And he said, no, I'm redigging the well of my father. He contends or disputes over well number 1. The second well that Isaac redug, he named it Sitnah, hatred or enmity. Because like contention or dispute, it also warranted a harsh name. It was not easy to redig this second well. Those around him did not make it easy for him to redig this well. But when he gets to the 3rd well that he's going to redig, he names it Rehovot, meaning spacious, Because the third time, there was no quarrel. There was no dispute, contention, enmity. There was no hatred. There was no hardship, but there was ample space in well number 3. So it's not only about creating the chazakah, lesson number 1. And it's not only about how many wells does he redig, but it's about how does he redig these wells. Because he goes from contention and enmity to spaciousness. The first 2 are challenging, hard, tension-filled, closed off. But the third is open, it's spacious, it's generative and encouraging. So number 1, we create the habits, but number 2, we know that our path in creating Jewish habits, in creating Jewish tradition, is not something that always starts off as easy. The first 2 tries are sometimes challenging, met with quarrel, met with dispute, contention. But to hold on to Jewish life, to do that in a way that you have to work through the challenge, we have to create the chazakah. We have to create the strength, the habit, and then we get enough space. When we persist, then we're able to say our Jewish tradition is sticking. It's having a place in this world. So number 1, we create the habit. Number 2, we understand that the habit is not easily created. We have to push through the hardship, and then we get to the place we need. And the third lesson that we could learn from Isaac redigging the wells is that he redug wells. Isaac could have said, you know what? There's too much challenge. People around us, they're not so fond of our people. I'm going to dig my own wells. I don't need to redig those of my father. I'm going to go on my own. I'm going to find my own well springs, and I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to focus on me, the individual. But instead, Isaac chooses to redig the wells of his tradition. He chooses to go back to the source of his father, to go back to the movement that is being created. He knows that it is on him to sustain it. Isaac simply could have dug his own wells, created his own path, focused on himself. But he didn't give in to this need of constant individualism, a need for personal glory, because he understood that there is glory in holding on to the tradition of our past. The Jewish people are time and time again met with contention, met with hatred, met with hardship. And we could say, you know what, it's time to just go on our own. It's time to just do things our own way. But rather, we learn from Isaac that we have to push through the challenge, that we have to say, there is glory in keeping the Jewish tradition alive. There is glory in pushing through hardship and ending with holding on to our past. So that's number 3. 1, creating a habit, chazakah. 2, the habit is not hard, not easy to do, but we have to push through the hardship. And 3, there is importance in holding on to tradition. But I want to say one more thing, which is that it's not just about holding on to the past. When Isaac redigs the wells, he's also redigging the wells for the purpose of creating new life and new water for the future. That he's not just taking the wells of the past and saying, these fit perfectly to the time now. These fit perfectly to what we need in the future. But rather, we need to both redig the wells of the past in order to make space, rechovot, for that which comes in the future. That my hope for us all is that we hold on tightly to Jewish tradition while also making sure that we're using that tradition for the future, that we're shaping that tradition for that which is needed in our time, whether it be easy to get to or incredibly difficult. Shabbat Shalom.